Everyone said I'd fail. Some whispered it behind my back. Some said it to my face. Friends I once sacrificed for. People I believed would always have my back. Watched from a distance as I stumbled. The same voices that once cheered me on turned into a quiet chorus of doubt. And when I needed them most, when the nights were longest and the fridge was empty, not one of them showed up. I remember sitting in a room that felt colder than the air inside it. My phone stayed silent. Messages I sent for help were left unread. Love I had poured into others was nowhere to be found. Every door I knocked on stayed closed. They said I'd never make it, that I was wasting my time, that I was chasing something impossible. But what they never saw, what they never expected, was the fire those words lit inside me. Because sometimes the loudest no becomes the spark for the greatest comeback. This is the story of how I went from forgotten and hungry to proving every single one of them wrong. Before the nights of empty plates and unanswered calls, there was a life that looked ordinary on the surface, but it was anything but easy. I grew up believing that if you worked hard, people would notice. That if you gave everything, the world would eventually give something back. But reality came for me early. Money was always a fight. Some days it felt like my family was one overdue bill away from losing everything. Dreams didn't feel like possibilities. They felt like distant jokes. Every decision was measured survival, not ambition. Teachers said I was smart but unfocused. Relatives told me to be realistic, to settle for a job, any job, before life left me behind. Even people I looked up to carried that quiet smirk, the one that says, "You'll see. The world isn't kind to people like you." They didn't believe in big dreams. And slowly, I started to wonder if maybe they were right. I tried anyway. I hustled. Late nights, early mornings, every side job I could grab, every small opportunity one could chase. I gave everything I had, even when everything wasn't much. But the harder I pushed, the more the walls seemed to close in. Applications went unanswered. Projects failed before they even started. And the people I counted on, friends I'd once helped through their storms, began to drift away. The same ones I sacrificed for couldn't find time to pick up the phone. Then came the heartbreak that cracked whatever belief I had left. Someone I loved, someone I thought would stand beside me when life got hard, decided I wasn't enough. Not because I lacked love, but because I lacked stability. Because I had nothing to offer except a heart still trying to figure things out. It wasn't just a breakup. It was a confirmation of every whisper I had ever heard. Maybe I really was chasing something impossible. I remember lying awake on nights when hope felt like a language I no longer spoke. Every rejection letter, every silence, every cold shoulder started to feel like proof that maybe the world had already decided my story. And it wasn't going to be a good one. But somewhere inside all that noise, a quiet question began to form. If the world is already counting me out, what do I have to lose by trying one more time? I thought I understood struggle, until the floor gave way beneath me. The hustle that once kept me afloat suddenly felt like a treadmill leading nowhere. Jobs I fought for disappeared overnight. Every call I made for help went unanswered. Every door I knocked on stayed shut. What cut deepest wasn't just the failures. It was the silence of people I had once carried through their storms. Friends I'd fed when I had barely enough for myself now vanished into the comfort of their own lives. People I had stayed up late to encourage, people I believed would show up for me, couldn't even send a message back. It was as if generosity had an expiration date, and mine had run out. Even love felt like a luxury I no longer deserved. The relationship I thought would survive anything crumbled under the weight of my empty pockets and constant setbacks. Affection turned into frustration. Care became criticism. One day it ended with words I still hear in the quiet. I can't build a life with someone who has nothing. There were nights when eating wasn't just difficult, it was a decision. Do I spend the last few coins on food, or save them for the bus ride to another dead-end interview? I remember staring at a cracked ceiling in a room that smelled of damp walls and forgotten dreams. The hum of the fridge was the only sound, and even that was ironic, because inside it was nothing but a half-empty bottle of water. The loneliness wasn't just physical, it was a weight on my chest. I questioned everything, my choices, my worth, my future. Thoughts came sharp and uninvited. Maybe they were right. Maybe I'm not built for this. Maybe quitting isn't weakness, it's survival. There were moments when I hovered on the edge of giving up, not just on dreams, but on the belief that any of it mattered. It felt like the world had already decided my story, and it wasn't going to be a happy ending. But somewhere in that silence, something refused to die. A stubborn whisper, small but steady, kept repeating, "Not like this. Not yet." It wasn't a plan. It wasn't even hope. It was just the refusal to let the darkness have the final word. At some point, the silence became louder than the noise of doubt. One night, sitting in that same cold room, staring at the cracked ceiling, something inside me broke. But it wasn't the kind of break that ends you. It was the kind that wakes you up. I remember gripping the edge of my bed, fists tight, heart pounding with a strange mix of anger and clarity. For weeks I had replayed every cruel word, every door slammed in my face. I had let their judgments echo louder than my own voice. But in that moment, a thought cut through the fog like a blade. If they've already counted me out, what do I have to lose by fighting back? It wasn't a grand revelation. No lightning bolt. No perfect plan. Just a decision, refusal. I refused to let their predictions become my truth. I refused to let my hunger be the final chapter of my story. That night, I wrote a single sentence on a scrap of paper. Tomorrow starts anyway, so start with it. It wasn't poetic, but it was enough. The next morning, I got up before the sun, even though there was no job to rush to. I went for a run on an empty stomach, each step pounding a new rhythm into my chest. Every breath burned, but it was a reminder that I was still alive, still capable of movement, still able to choose. Pain stopped being a prison and became fuel. Every rejection became a rep in a workout I hadn't realized I was training for. The hunger sharpened me instead of hollowing me out. That small act, choosing to begin, even without a map, was the first crack in the wall around me. It didn't fix everything overnight, but it shifted something far more important. My belief that I was powerless. And once that belief was gone, the fight back had already begun. The morning after that decision, nothing around me looked different. The room was still cold, the fridge still empty, and my phone still silent. But I was different. I'd stopped waiting for someone to rescue me. If change was going to happen, it had to start with the smallest steps. I began with a routine, even when it felt pointless. Up before sunrise, a run to clear the noise in my head, 30 minutes of reading, books about growth, resilience, and people who had clawed their way out of worse. I wrote down 3 goals every morning, even if they were as simple as to send one email, learn one new skill, or stay disciplined. At first, nothing moved. Applications still went unanswered. Businesses I tried to start barely limped forward before collapsing. There were days when I'd land an interview only to be rejected in the first 5 minutes. Each no stung, but I began to see them differently. Every rejection was proof that I was still in the game. Every closed door meant I was one door closer to the one that would finally open. Small wins began to appear, almost invisible at first. A stranger responding to a message, a new skill that made the next application stronger, a small freelance job that paid just enough to buy groceries for the week. Tiny victories, but each one added a brick to the foundation I was building. I learned to network without pride. I introduced myself to people who were further ahead, even when I felt unworthy. Most ignored me, but a few offered advice that became gold. Their words taught me that opportunity doesn't just arrive. You have to chase it, even when you're out of breath. There were setbacks that nearly broke me again. Jobs lost at the last minute. Friendships that didn't survive my new focus. Nights when exhaustion whispered that nothing would ever change. But every time I felt the pull to quit, I remembered the room with the cracked ceiling and the empty fridge. That memory became my fuel. Each morning I rose a little stronger, a little sharper. Every no brought me closer to a yes. Every small win proved that movement, no matter how slow, was still movement. The climb was brutal, but it was shaping someone new, someone who refused to go back. The turning point didn't arrive with a spotlight. It came through relentless effort that finally met opportunity. After months of empty inboxes, one bold, high-risk move changed everything. I took on a project that terrified me, one I wasn't qualified for on paper. but I refused to let fear write the ending. It was all or nothing, a gamble that could have buried me deeper or set me free. Every lesson from the climb became a weapon. The 4 a.m. mornings, the endless nights of studying new skills, the hours spent mastering tools no one was paying me to learn. They all collided in that single chance. While others rested, I treated every rejection as training. Pain became my purpose. Every failure sharpened my focus. I also forced myself to build connections, even when pride told me to stay invisible. I reached out to people far ahead of me, asked hard questions, listened more than I spoke. Slowly, doors began to open, first a crack, then wider. One introduction led to a second, a client to a mentor to an opportunity that reshaped everything. The breakthrough wasn't just financial. It was proof that sacrifice pays off when matched with relentless learning. That taking calculated risks, while everyone else plays it safe, creates the kind of results people call lucky. Soon, the same voices that once doubted me started calling for advice. But the real victory wasn't their attention. It was standing in the life I built from nothing, knowing every sleepless night and every painful lesson had been transformed into fuel. I didn't just escape rock bottom. I used it as a foundation and turned pain into purpose. Looking back, the real victory wasn't the paycheck, the recognition, or the sudden invitations from people who once ignored me. The real victory was who I became in the process. Rock bottom stripped me of illusions, but it also revealed a strength I never knew existed. I learned that resilience isn't just surviving the fall. It's choosing to stand up again and again, even when standing feels impossible. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's built in the quiet hours when no one is watching. And self-belief isn't something you wait for. It's something you build brick by brick, choice by choice. I discovered that pain can be a teacher if you let it. Every rejection trained me to stay sharp. Every sleepless night hardened my focus. Every setback forced me to create new skills that later became my greatest assets. What once felt like punishment was actually preparation. If you're in your own impossible season, I need you to hear this. The voices that doubt you are not the final word. Your circumstances are not a life sentence. You don't have to know the whole path. You only need to take the next step. Start small. Build habits. Learn relentlessly. Take the risk that scares you. Turn your pain into fuel instead of letting it bury you. Because the same fire that lit my comeback lives in you. And when you decide to fight for it, the world that once told you no will have no choice but to watch you rise. Who told you that you can't? Who decided your story is already written? They don't get the final say. You do. If my journey proves anything, it's that rock bottom is not the end. It's the start of something unshakable. Your fight, your comeback, begins the moment you decide it does. If this message lit a spark in you, share it with someone who needs hope. And subscribe so we can rise together, one fearless step at a time.